Hi, my name is Phil Fisk and I am a professional photographer. I initially did a degree in sociology because my first idea in life was that I liked writing, and I thought I'd go off to college and become a journalist. So I studied that. But it was at college that I was introduced to my first camera. It was a little module as part of journalism to say, oh, there's also photojournalism. So they gave us cameras and we went out, and I think that's what sort of sparked it off for me. So I didn't study photography apart from 2 weeks in a 3-year course. And so I completed my degree, I left college, and suddenly thought visual media, that's what I just want to work in visuals. At that time I wasn't completely sure it was just photography. So I started out, I went and worked as a runner on film sets, and I worked in a casting studio in central London, and then eventually went back to a college and got a job as what's called a darkroom technician. So this is now 25, 27 years ago when we all shot on film. So that's where I learned the technical aspect of it. So what happened with me is I just started learning on the job. And once I was at the darkroom, I was learning how to process film. And then I started assisting other photographers, and this was my kind of entry into the industry, which is actually where kind of 99% of people would start. So having first assisted, which I did for about 2 years, I then worked at a photography studio as well. So working all the time, and by working I was saving money, and every weekend and every free evening I started putting together what's called a portfolio, which nowadays would be your Instagram feed. Although we will have to do that. But back then you had a book and every single page had to have a new picture on it. And it was a series of projects mainly. And it was with this book that I started ringing up magazines and newspapers and saying, hey, I'm Phil, will you have a look at my work? And I think in essence that's still how it works today. It's all about saying, look at me, look at what I've done. Do you like this? Will you hire me? That is essentially what being a photographer or working as a professional photographer involves. So that was now 20 years ago, and believe it or not, people took notice and liked what I did. And then I think what happens then is your career just starts like it starts like a ball rolling down a hill. You start kind of picking up other things as you go along, and you start meeting new people, and you start working for different kinds of publications, and eventually you start finding new and different jobs. So after 20 years, my first big job was working for the Observer magazine, which is a national supplement. And initially it was just photographing real people. So it was people with stories to tell. Then one day they called me up and they said, oh, do you want to photograph a famous artist? So this was one of my first ever big commissions, was to photograph the artist David Hockney. So this was quite daunting, having never photographed anyone who was in the public eye. But not only that, one of what people consider to be one of the sort of biggest artists of the 20th century. So this is it. You get involved, you start having confidence in what you do, and then if the shoot goes well, they come back. I mean, the daunting thing about photography, and it's a cliche, is that you're kind of only ever as good as your last job. So if you do get hired by someone new and the shoot doesn't go well, they may not call you back unless they understand that the shoot didn't go well because it was out of your control. But you've just got to keep picking yourself up and keep finding new clients. So that's what I've done for about 10 years, and then I started working for TV companies. So when you see posters out on the streets, because I started shooting actors, people started thinking, well, we can trust Phil to shoot these big actors. And so when you see posters for new TV shows, that's a special shoot that's normally done in a studio, and then they're put on billboards and bus stops. And so that's something that happened after about 10 years working for magazines. And then in the last sort of 5 or 6 years, I've moved into making commercials in the same way. So when there's little adverts on television for new TV series, and you might see a 10 or 15-second advert for that, I'm now shooting them as well, and also working for advertising agencies, which is great because these jobs pay quite well, which means I can still keep my passion going for what I for photography outside of what you get paid for. Essentially just a real passion for photography. It's not a hobby, it's not a sideline, and it isn't just a paid job. You have to just love it. I mean, it's something that you do in your free time as well as get paid for. Hard work, adaptability, and just a passion for what you do. There are every option open to you for that, really. You could go to college, you could study photography, you could use that to explore the kind of photography you want to do, listen to the lecturers, hang out with other students, or you could just start looking and researching yourself and find the photographers that you like, the kind of styles that you like, read magazines. Essentially, there's any way into photography that you like. If you can pick up a camera and you can make great images and then you can show them to the world, you can eventually just forge a career for yourself. None. I'm going to keep saying that because I know this is going to schools. You could do O-levels, you can do A-levels. They're great because it's going to just keep you, you know, hopefully it'll keep your passion alive. But the qualifications is just taking pictures, exploring what other photographers do, letting that influence your work, analyze your work, and just keep wondering how you can be better or more interesting. And that is the only qualification I think that you need. A bit like the qualifications, it's limitless. Some photographers are millionaires and some photographers barely make a living. It's one of those jobs. People have got to want to work with you as opposed to the thousands of other photographers that are out there. If the stars align and you meet the right people, the right clients, you can earn a lot of money. I'd say working in London as a professional photographer, you'd want to be earning, and you can earn, so between 50 and 100,000 would be what I would call a successful point in your career. Well, I think any kind of volunteering and work experience is relevant, but I think for photography, if you don't go to college or even after college, it's really important to try and volunteer your services so you can watch how other people work, how shoots operate. It isn't just you've got to remember. I mean, when you start working professionally, there could be up to 10 other people in the room. You're essentially not just a photographer, you are performing in front of everybody, not just the subject that you're taking the photograph with. So if you can volunteer for and get onto as many shoots as possible, I'd say that's the best route you could take. I think, like all industries in the creative realm, you know, things go up and down. I think the main thing is that you move with the times. So if you move with the times and you're adaptable and you keep that passion alive, I think your long-term career prospects would be good. You know, I think if you get to a certain point and then think everything's going to be the same forever, with technology and the way that the industry works, it's not going to be that way. So I would say they're good if you're willing to work hard and not give up, but don't think it's guaranteed. For me, it's led to directing moving image, commercials and music videos. I think that's probably the natural thing that a career in photography would lead you to. And I think that's partly out of the fact that I've been taking photographs for 20 years, and it's all about, as I said, it's about finding new challenges and working out how you can take the skills that you've learned as a photographer and apply them to directing moving image and motion. The kind of photography that I do, it's all about freedom. So I think I wanted this career because I also didn't want to be a 9-to-5er. I didn't want to be behind a desk. I wanted to see new things. I wanted to meet new people. So in that sense, the job itself offers you a lot of freedom. Plus, you're not working every day. So it gives you the freedom to go out when you're not working and then pick up your camera and then go and try and find and explore new things. I'd say it's all about freedom. If you're interested in finding more information, I'd recommend there's a very, very good photography magazine called the British Journal of Photography. If you want to take a look at that, there is an online version if you don't want to sort of subscribe to the magazine. But it's a good look at what's going on, not only in art photography, which is really inspirational, but it also has lots of great interviews with photographers and how their career started. There are also a number of other magazines out there where I think they've done interviews. I've done one in the past with, I think it was called Professional Photographer. This is something that I kind of learnt the hard way, is that as passionate as you are about photography, you could go off and got up at 3 o'clock every day for 2 weeks to get some amazing landscapes, or spent 2 weeks trying to get portraits with people who didn't really want to have their portrait taken, and you persuaded them. And then what do? You've got to put it in front of people. So that idea of picking up the phone, finding out who you really want to work for, and having the guts to basically put the work in front of them, and be prepared to accept that they might not like it, or they might not be that interested or not that impressed. And it's just doing that. Don't hesitate. Don't spend too long with your pictures under your bed or keeping them to yourself. And I think now with social media, you've got a very easy way of putting it out there, but you have to also very directly make sure that people are looking at your pictures and get them to respond, get them to give you feedback. So that if they're not taking attention of what you're doing, you need to know why. That would be my final thought.